Hi, so my name is Nolan Labahn. I'm going to be going through my Honors Academy senior project, which is the PC process. So basically, I researched, bought, built kind of, you'll see, and then upgraded a PC computer. So the first step in this project was selecting a project. Um, so I wanted to do something that I would enjoy, but it would also be unfamiliar and new. I didn't want to do something like monotonous or like something I already like knew everything about because then I wouldn't learn anything. Um, so yeah, I knew nothing about computers, but I would always like technology. Like when I was a kid, I would always mess around on any iPads or anything I can get my hands on, all that kind of stuff. Um, but I never knew like what the actual parts were. I mean, as a kid, you don't really care about that. But like as I got older, I'm like, how does this all work? Um, so then I started to wonder about like, okay, what did the actual parts inside of here do? So that's when I kind of thought of this, building a PC. Um, and I thought, yeah, I thought of it sophomore year, and I thought I could use it for leisure, schoolwork, and gaming. Um, and yeah, I just thought it'd be a really good project because I'd be able to do those three things on it, and then also learn a lot while building it about what actually makes or what it's composed of. So yeah. The next step in the process was finding a mentor. So obviously, since I knew nothing about computers, I wanted to find someone who actually did know stuff about computers, unlike me. So the first person I thought of was Mr. B, or he's the teacher and technology director at ESM, Manual St. Michael Lutheran School. And he knows a ton about anything technology. So computers, websites, Chromebooks, parts, like all that kind of stuff. He knows everything about it. And he answered literally every single question I had throughout the entire process. So this is just really, really great for helping me get this done. And he has tons of experience and knowledge as well. So the next step in the process was research. So before you build a PC, you want to know what the parts actually do so that you can select the best value parts, right? So first you want to diagnose, okay, what am I going to play on this computer? What am I going to do? And that can help you determine what parts you actually need. How much do you need to spend on parts? So learning about what each one did and knowing what I wanted to do helped me figure out what money I wanted to spend on each part. So yeah, it really just helps you to find the best value ones. So I explored some possible builds and set up online wish lists to track part prices. So I used this website called PC Part Picker at first, just to kind of price things out, go through some builds that they had on there and make my own, edit stuff, just figure out, how all this kind of stuff works. And then I also set up online wish lists through like Amazon and stuff that can send you emails when like a price part drops. So I made some of those just to kind of get an idea of the part pricing in the market. The next step was COVID challenges. So during this time, I mean, obviously during COVID, like inflation happened a lot, but it also affected the PC part market or PC market in general, or technology market in general, basically. So yeah, many parts experienced shortages and their prices became heavily inflated. So the clearest example of this was the graphics card. So before COVID, like the max MSRP for like a reasonable but like really good card was about $700. But during COVID, some of the best cards sold us for as much as $2,000 on like eBay. So that price really went into the sky. And obviously, I didn't want to spend. That's an integral part of the PC, and I didn't want to spend a ton of money on that part or any of the other parts that would have been so inflated during and after COVID. So we decided to reevaluate where I would go with this project. So reevaluation. So buying each part individually and assembling was just going to be too expensive and challenging because of the COVID supply issues. So Mr. B and I threw out a few options, and we ended up deciding on one. So I would buy a pre-built PC, or basically that means that a company makes it and you just buy it all put together. But then after I bought it, I would disassemble and reassemble it. And this would be far cheaper for the same machine because pre-built PC companies get bulk discounts on parts usually, so they can sell them for a cheaper price sometimes than what it would cost to build it by yourself, or at least during this post-COVID market. They also have since they can buy parts in bulk, they can get some of those parts that are really hard to find. This also eliminates the need to monitor part prices and wait for each individual part to ship. So because of COVID, because the prices were pretty high, and also you don't know what kind of supply issues you're going to run into if you're trying to get parts shipped from all different websites and countries and stuff like that. So this would just eliminate that need. It also assure compatibility. At least it's supposed to. They're supposed to test it before you get it, just to make sure everything works. But you at least know that all the parts can work together. It might take a little messing with, but it usually works right when you get it. And then disassembly and reassembly also allowed me to still experience the essential aspects of building, just without spending as much money, which is totally true. I mean, I'll talk about this later, but I saved a decent bit of money buying a pre-built, but I still got to experience that integral part of actually disassembling and reassembling the PC. So the next step in the process was purchasing a pre-built. So I started monitoring a few websites for PCs, found one, actually Mr. B sent this one to me specifically, found one for really good value on the Micro Center website, which if you don't know, a Micro Center is it's like a Best Buy, but like even better. And they have like whole PC building sections and stuff like that, but they're only in big cities and you have to pick up some of the stuff you buy from them in person. So I ended up buying a PC off their website for $1,100. But when I actually found the value of the parts and put it all together, it's actually $1,500 value wise. So I saved a good $400 on that, which is a really good deal. And you might say that's expensive. Well, yeah, it is. $1,100 still pretty expensive, but I was able to save up for a few years prior to this since I knew I was going to be building a PC. So I kind of just saved up money for 2 or 3 years to make sure I would be able to do that. So yeah, this PC was only available in-store pickup. So my parents picked it up at the Chicago Micro Center while they were visiting my grandparents. Jeez. All right. So upon receiving the PC, I made sure it had all the parts as advertised. That's the first thing I did, just to make sure they're not scamming you or anything. I also made a Windows account and downloaded some basic apps, your kind of standard computer setup or device setup. Everything seemed to be working fine, except for one of the case fans, which wouldn't spin. So this was like my first, it's not a big error, but it's like my first thing I had to troubleshoot with any computer. So I was a little bit worried just because it was the first thing that was wrong with it. And I was really freaked out just because I'd never had any errors with this kind of thing, which looking back on it seems stupid, but I spent a few hours troubleshooting software. I thought it might have been temperature control. I texted Mr. B a bit, only to realize that it just wasn't plugged in correctly the whole time. So I just unplugged it and plugged it back in, and then it worked. So I probably should have done that first, but you learn as you go. So on the left, that's a picture of it not spinning. It's the fan on the top that lights up. You can kind of see the individual blades because it's not spinning. And then on the right, you can see it spinning. So yeah. So the process, next step was disassembly and assembly. So the first, I'm not going to go into the super deep specifics because it's a little bit boring if you don't really know what all the different parts are. And it's kind of similar thing for each part. But the first step was to unplug all the cables, and then we were to remove one part at a time. And then reassembly is literally just the reverse of that. I mean, we might have switched around the order of a few things, but it's basically essentially the same thing. You just put all the parts back in and plug them all back in. And then once you're done with that, you can zip tie all the cables that connect to the motherboard or the power supply, right? So you zip tie them to make them look nice so they don't look all messed up and make everything look ugly, and they're just hanging out in the middle. So you're able to zip tie those on the back just to make everything look neater. And then after that, I opened 7 billion tabs and games and videos just to make sure everything was running as it should, running smoothly, everything is working. Okay, so these are a few pictures of the actual build. So this one right here is the motherboard. That's what everything kind of plugs into, and that's the CPU right there in the middle, that little square. That's the central processing unit. So that is kind of like the brain. And then around here, this is a power supply. So it supplies power from to everything. And here's the RAM. So that kind of does memory. That stores the memory for what you're doing at that present moment. So whatever you're doing, if you're playing a game right then, it's storing the memory for that. And then right here is just kind of an overall picture. This is a CPU cooler right here. So that just keeps the central processing unit, the little square on the last slide, that just keeps it cool. And then this is an SSD. So it's kind of like an external hard drive, if you've ever seen of that, except it's internal. And then it's also an SSD instead of a HDD, which basically just means, oops, I don't know why I went back. Basically just means it's a bit faster and better in like pretty much every way than a normal internal hard drive. But yeah, it still stores just all your files and stuff, just like a hard drive. So the next step in the process was upgrades. So this PC is intended to last a long time, and with that comes upgrades. So the first things I wanted to upgrade was the CPU, so central processing unit cooler, and then the random access memory, or RAM. So those were the first two things I upgraded. I also ordered a little mini fan, which you can kind of see on the side right there. It's a little small. So installing these was, or at least the CPU cooler was a bit difficult. And we needed to buy an extra, me and Mr. B were working on it, and we figured out that we needed to buy an extra part on Amazon in order to put the cooler in the socket or the bracket. So I'd buy like a $7 part on Amazon just so I can make sure to get it in there, because when we actually ordered the computer, it didn't come with that bracket, so we needed to buy it. And then I did end up getting everything installed correctly. However, I'm having some issues when I started up, when I boot Windows, the fan on that GPU down there stops spinning unless I try to regulate it manually. And then sometimes I have some CPU cooler issues when I start it up. So I am going to work through that as soon as AP tests are done, which by the time you're seeing this, they will be. So I'll probably be working on it at that point. So I'm just going to troubleshoot some things with that, try and figure out, I think it's Mr. B and I asked him, and probably a power supply issue, which means it's just not enough power for everything to go around, because as you buy more expensive parts, the wattage that those parts require increases. So you might not have enough power anymore even though you used to, if you're buying new things that require wattage. So I'm going to explore some stuff with that and try and figure that out in the future. So what I learned. So first thing I learned was to work calmly through issues. So they're going to happen no matter what. There's not really a point if you're just going to panic. I mean, I learned that pretty early. It doesn't help you work any better to panic, because they're going to happen. Just got to accept it and just try and stay calm while you're working through them. It just helps you work with a clearer mind and try and troubleshoot it that way. It's a bit better. And then also, yep, these are the three things I attempted to work calmly through. I already talked about the case fan, first issue, so not exactly. GPU cooler socket, that was pretty calm. And then the GPU fan and cooler upgrade issues, yeah, I'm staying pretty calm with that. I mean, things happen when you make upgrades. That's gonna happen. So just got to figure that out. And then the internet has a wealth of information. Use it. Right. So if you run into an issue, just literally just Google it or look up a YouTube video or look on Reddit. I mean, chances are someone else has already encountered the same issue or one similar, and they have posted a solution on there or some help that you can go through or try and figure it out. So that's just, I mean, for life in general too, you can do that, but especially for if you're building anything that has parts, right? Just literally just Google it. I mean, it has so much information. You can figure out pretty much anything. And it also has information about what all the parts do. So if you ever need to know what something does, if you're trying to, I mean, even in the research stage on the buying process, right? I'm researching what I want to buy parts wise. I mean, obviously you just Google it, try to get a feel of how much different parts cost, what are the best ones, all that kind of stuff. You can find all that on the internet. And then also, yeah, I used it for troubleshooting issues like I talked about. Also, make a connection with someone who has extensive knowledge or experience, right? So Mr. B definitely was that for me. I mean, he helped me with pretty much every issue I ever ran into, even when I was texting him like past midnight and sending like frenzied videos, right? He would help answer like pretty much every single question I ever had. So that was just super helpful. And it just helps you like stay reassured throughout the whole process. And then also things will work out, have patience, right? I mean, you're going to run into issues. You're going to get worried sometimes. Like I was worried during the COVID market situation, but everything will work out in the end. You just gotta have faith, have patience. And yeah, at least I'm attempting to put it into practice right now, or when I try to resolve the power supply issues. I mean, yeah, like I said earlier, if you just panic and get all worked up about everything, it's going to be a little bit difficult, or at least a little bit more difficult to try and work on what you want and try to fix things. If you're like letting emotion to get a hold of you, you might do something stupid or break something or get all mad when you don't need to. So yep, just have patience, stay calm, make a connection, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching my video. I had a really great time doing this project. I learned a ton about computers that I wouldn't have known. And today as soon as I get my computer repaired, I'm going to be using it again, working on stuff, homework, playing games, obviously, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, thanks for watching.